Welcome to the Organizational Transformation Kung Fu podcast with your hosts, Sandi and Jennifer Long.
So welcome everyone to our first podcast of Organizational Transformation Kung Fu. I'm Sandi and I'm here with my good friend Jen Long. Hey Jen.
Hey Sandi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. I'm so excited today.
I am too.
I'm really excited about this podcast, and we know, and both you and I know, that there's lots of choice out there, so we're so glad that our listeners are choosing to spend their time with us today.
Exactly. Thanks for making the time.
Before we introduce ourselves, I have to say that many people have stopped me and said, what does organizational transformation Kung Fu actually mean? And, they understand the organizational transformation, but why Kung Fu? And that's really a good question. So, Jen, why don't you explain why we believe OTKungFu really describes our podcast?
It is a good question, and we thought long and hard about what to call this podcast. But the word Kung Fu refers to any study, learning, or practice that requires patience, energy, and time to complete. In its original meaning, Kung Fu can refer to a discipline or a skill achieved through hard work and practice. And that's not necessarily the martial arts, so we thought that was kind of appropriate. We believe that, like the art of Kung Fu, in order for organizations to truly transform, they need the discipline of patience, energy, and time. But as you know, time is elusive and something that happens, it's hard to come by. So as a result, many change efforts fail, right? So fail to stick, fail to do what they're supposed to, fail to do what we anticipate they're going to do because they're not given enough patience, enough energy, and enough time to complete. So that's why we went with Kung Fu. Like you, Sandi, I'm passionate about helping organizations to be successful by getting them skilled up. Of course, it's not just about training. That's just one component. They need to have Kung Fu, right? They have to have patience, energy, and time to really make a change.
I totally agree. That's awesome. It really is that internal fortitude and discipline that organizations have to have in order for transformation to happen. And while the whole notion of Kung Fu stands out, I really think it's the true question should really be is, what is organizational transformation? And I hear it, and you probably hear it all the time, but transformation is one of those buzzwords that get thrown around everywhere, right? Everybody's transforming everything.
Yeah.
But when we talk about organizational transformation, we're really talking about the ability to invoke change. We'll move an organization from a present state to a future state. And when I say that out loud, I got to say it sounds a bit glib and a little bit easy. But it's really not. And that's why we work with so many organizations to try to help them move to that future state. We're really here to help people make things happen.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. And I agree with you. It's that patience and energy and time to change. But what we bring to the table, I think, is what we try to do with organizations is really help them with those tools and experiences that will help them make that transformation successful.
Right. So you and I have been doing this kind of stuff for a number of years. I've been in training and development for over 30 years, started coaching before coaching was a thing, and really committed to the individual transformation. It starts there. That's the power of what one person can bring to an organization, the impact they can have. And so by you listening to this, we're hoping that we can impact you on an individual basis to make your own transformations, because as you bring those into your organizations, that's how it all works. It starts with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so I haven't quite been coaching quite as long as Jen has. Maybe that's just an age thing. No, that's not. But I have been coaching since 2004, and I've been consulting in my own practice since 2011, but consulting within an organization, 2 external organizations since 2004. So been at this a long time, and I really do believe, in kind of at my core, is we're really here to help solve the complicated problems of our clients and help them. They don't have the either internal resources, or they don't have the time, or they just have too many other things on their plate. And we're really here to help them transform, giving kind of our expertise and our tools and what we bring to the table.
Right. The outside perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So, Jen, why don't you share with everybody so they can get to know us a little bit better about how we met?
Wow, we met in Minnesota.
Yeah,
Exactly. I'm a Colorado girl, and I was up in Minnesota getting some training and development because, I do drink my own Kool-Aid. And Sandi was in my class. And we immediately hooked up. We were forced to do those roundtable exercises that you're also familiar with. And so I got to learn a little bit about Sandi and what she's about and what she does for a living. And we hit it off, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We did. A few dinners later.
Here we are making a podcast. Exactly.
And I think the interesting thing is you're in Colorado and I'm in Toronto, Canada. So we're trying to keep this friendship alive from a distance.
Exactly. And those Canadians have the same issues we have.
Every organization has the same issue. And it's funny, one of those things that a lot of my clients, they say is like, we have these, really deep, unique issues. And while there's subtleties and changes for everybody, the issues across organizations are really similar. Everybody's struggling with the same stuff.
That's right. If you've got humans, you've got similar issues. So it's all good.
Yeah.
All right. You want to talk about what we're going to go for here today?
Yeah, for sure. So today, I thought we would talk a little bit about strategy and strategic planning. So through our podcast, we're going to be talking about a whole lot of stuff that ranges from strategy to coaching to all sorts of things. But within this podcast, we really thought we'd start it off quickly by starting with strategy, which is a big, lofty, big topic. To get you to start thinking about what strategy means to your organization, and we'll tell you a little bit about what we think strategy means, and in our minds. And so we're going to really set the stage today for the next podcast that's going to come in, to you shortly. So that's a little bit of foreshadowing for you of what you can anticipate. We'll also talk about accountability and mission, vision, and values and leadership and all sorts of basket of stuff. Right, Jen?
That's right. We're going to talk about all the hot topics. We're going to talk coaching and about building a coaching culture. We're going to talk about teamwork, team building, everything team will be a big topic. And the need for skilling up our employees and the need for what we're calling talent shaping will also be covered in upcoming podcasts.
Excellent. So let's do it.
All right.
You ready to go?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So let's start really about strategy, and it's the top of the house for me. I really look at things as foundations and things like that, and strategy is that really big piece that it's a bit elusive, and it means different things to different people. But what I find really is that most strategic plans are a series of tactics and not really strategic or even planned for that matter. What do you think, Jen?
I agree. I think strategy seems elusive. I think people find it a little loosey-goosey when you really kind of push them on what they're thinking about in terms of strategy. And I think they get confused about what strategy really is.
Yeah. And so then it really gets boiled down to a bunch of tactics, right? And I see so many plans that are just these lists and lists and lists of things that they're going to peg off, which is important because there's accountability there to get things done.
Right, got to have goals, right?
Yeah, for sure. But it's not strategy. So I really look at strategy as being abstract, and it really needs to be looked at a higher level, and kind of taking in consideration the whole entire organization, so that total organizational view when you're dealing with strategy. And I think that the organization struggles so much because it's really not concrete. It's not, I need to grow by X%. That is a goal, but not a strategy.
Right.
And that's why, they're not really relatable at all levels. And so the CEO comes and creates, a strategic plan, but the strategies really get confused and muddled up with what goals and priorities and tactics are.
Right. And I kind of want to hit on that word. You use the word abstract. And strategy is abstract, and it's a broader view, right? You're standing outside of what you're actually doing. And executives really get tripped up on that in terms of it is abstract. It's not an answer. It's not a spreadsheet. It's not a list. It's not time bound in a way, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that it's important to remember it feels different, right? So the work of strategy feels fundamentally different than the kind of work executives are typically doing, where they're looking for answers and they're analyzing and they're making concrete actions and steps, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why it's so difficult. And that's why I always find, I don't know about you, Jim, but when I'm in strategic planning sessions, I get, kind of the higher up you are in that food chain, the more antsy they get in strat planning sessions, because they just want to get down to, well, what do we have to do?
Right.
And without a strategy, it's just a list of things to do, and without really knowing where you're going. So it's an interesting kind of conundrum, because the strategy really needs to be set by these people that are higher up in the organization, but they're also the ones that want to get really tactical.
Right. And a lot of executives are promoted up because they get stuff done. So they're in that mindset of what do we need to do to get it done, instead of the mindset of where are we heading and how are we doing that. Yeah. And that's, a whole another podcast, I think, about how organizations are promoting from within because their foundational skills are so good. But leadership skills and that ability to lead often doesn't follow suit. Right. I find that when you're doing those strat planning sessions with the leaders who are big executors, right, and they're exhausted when they get up because they've really had to do lifting in parts of their brain they haven't been in for a while.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
All right, well, let's give them an example of what we might be talking about. You got one?
Yeah. So a strategy really is a position. You got to look at it differently from a tactic and a goal and a priority. So it might be your position on price. So we are going to be, the price leader, or in any kind of given realm, whatever your group is, or on a position on demographics. We want to be the product or widget of choice for women between the ages of 24 to 49. Or it might be on customer service or on staffing. But it's the position that you're taking for your overall organization. So strategies, again, are much more abstract. You can see that if it's a strategy on price, though, it's really, there's all sorts of things you could do once you know that you want to be that cost leader, or you want to be the price leader on it.
Right.
So it's really important that we can articulate what these goals are so that people within the organization can really start to see and visualize what that actually means.
Right. And it's kind of a deeper thought, right? So when you say to somebody, what's your position on that, right? Just in general, you can be talking about anything, politics, sports, whatever it is. And you say to someone, hey, what's your position? You got to think, right? You don't just blurt out here's where I am. Sometimes you got to go, all right, well, here, I could be here or I could be here. I can see it from different sides, which is why strategy planning is such a key thing, right? Mm-hmm, it takes some thought. It takes some discussion with your team to get perspective, right?
Yeah. And I think as we're talking through this, one of the things that comes to mind is I wonder if we just transpose the word strategy and position, if it would be easier and clearer for people in these sessions to get the difference.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking, kind of thinking as I'm talking here, but, because strategy is such an elusive thing and it really, really gets tactical pretty quick, we elevate it and say, well, what's your position? What's the position that you have on these things such as price, community, philanthropic things, all that sort of thing. It might be an easier way for people to get their head around what that strategy is and be able to articulate it.
Right. Yeah. Good. So in some sense, it's about how you take your approach, right? It's about how you come at the activities themselves. I don't think organizational leaders sometimes stop to think about their approach to the market or to the product development because they can get so deep into work at times. Yeah. So if we look at it from a learning and development perspective, it's like we know that leadership development is super important for the company. And we know that we want to create our leaders internally. So we focus on the activities, right, of leadership development. What makes a great leadership program, so to speak. When instead, if we stood outside that specific task and looked at how we approach learning as adults in like 2018, because it's not the same, and how mindsets are really shifting about knowledge versus experience, we might find our approach needs to change based on outdated assumptions of learning. So that's a long way to say we need a new strategy for leadership development.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when we talk about strategies and strategic planning, I really think a really good example is one of Google's strategies. So one of their strategies is to be vertical integration through industry interdependence. So not a tactic, it could be a goal, but not really measurable. But really, it talks about what do they want? They want to partner with like-minded organizations across different sectors, so they can grow their industry. And so the more interdependence they have with other companies, the stronger Google's going to be. And so that's a really good example of what a strategy is for an organization. So Google's got, I don't know, they probably have about 5 main strategies, and then all sorts of goals and priorities and actions fall from them. But it's really that higher level. And so you can really get your mind around what that strategy looks like and how it could play out within the organization and why it's an important strategy for Google. And we all know Google, and they do that really well. I think Google kind of owns the world.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they're definitely making it happen.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, that's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if we've got, I'm trying to think of, as you're talking about Google, I was trying to think about other companies in terms of strategies that are known that we all can give as an example. I'm coming up empty.
Well, I think there's, I don't know if it's Toyota or not, but, Toyota, they, well, maybe not Toyota. Let's talk about, which one is it? Oh my gosh, I don't drive a Toyota.
That car company.
That their whole premise is safety.
Oh, Volvo.
Which one's that? Volvo, yeah.
They own safety, man. That's their thing.
And so, their strategy, one of their strategies is definitely going to kind of own the word safety, right?
Right.
And so how does that play out in all of the organizational tactics and priorities that they have?
Good one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And so we can really, when we step back from our organizations and we look at other organizations that are super successful and what strategies they have in place, they kind of come to light. There was one recently when I was listening to actually a Ford commercial, and it was all about kind of owning that demographic of parents that are running their kids here, there, and everywhere, like soccer moms, right? The taxi drivers. Right. And one of their strategies is to really ingratiate themselves into that group of people. Right.
So it becomes sort of obvious when you start to think about the advertising world, right? So especially car advertising. What is Subaru's tactic? What is their strategy?
Subaru is off-roaders, isn't it?
Well, in here in the States, it's all about love, right? Their whole thing is it's this long, you own it forever because you love it, and I forget the tagline, but it has to do with love. But right, that's probably what they want me. That's all I need to remember.
Yeah,
You're gonna love it, and you're gonna love it forever.
Yeah, it does. And so that's their position, right? Their market position is around love, right?
Yeah.
And think about Starbucks. What was back in the day, and probably still is, what was their strategy? It was to create a coffee culture that was different than any coffee culture that we had.
Right. Yeah. They created the coffee culture. I think we used to be sort of half and half on coffee and tea until they showed up.
Yeah. It really changed the world, right? So now we have, one of the big things that comes to mind of kind of cars and coffee together is, when now you shop for a car and you ask them how many cup holders there are. Like we never, back 20 years ago, you didn't get a car with cup holders.
That's right. You were spilling it in your lap.
Yeah, that's right. Or probably not driving with it. Right?
Oh, yeah,
It was
of course
very,
we
very
were. Exactly. Well, that's a good smattering of where strategy shows up, right? You can see it becomes part of your language. It becomes part of what you put into your collateral. It becomes the vocabulary, right? When you talk about it, and you can tell when it's effective because people like Sandi and I who have watched TV can remember stuff like that, right? We've seen it so frequently, and they're so good at putting it out there.
Yeah. And so I really want to leave our listeners today with kind of a bit of homework, I guess.
Perfect.
It's kind of like being in school.
That's you know, if you're going to talk to coaches always, if you're a good coach, you're leaving with an assignment.
Yeah, that's right. And so I want to leave our listeners with the homework that has them look at their strategies and their strategy plan. So, go to that corner office and dust it off because a lot of strat plans sit dusty on a desk or on a shelf somewhere. And I want you to really look to see if your strategies are strategies or a position or just a bunch of actions and goals.
Right.
And then our next podcast, we'll explore that a little bit further.
Yes, we will. We will ask you about your homework. We will hope you have it with you and start to get into it a little bit deeper. Excellent. All right. Well, I think that sounds like that's it for us.
Yeah, I think so.
So
we are going to try to keep these to like 30 minutes, right? Or that's kind of what we're trying to do so that we can help transform your business through our organizational transformation Kung Fu in 30 minutes or less.
That's right. 30 minutes of focus, patience, a little bit of energy into strategy. So hopefully you're walking around with the notion now, how am I thinking about my strategy? What is my position? What is our position as an organization? Are we clear on what that is? Or do we just have a list of tasks and goals? So that's your evaluation homework to take away and think through today.
Excellent. And thanks, Jen, for doing this first podcast with me. And so, like I said in the beginning, I'm so excited about going down this journey with you. There's so much information that you have in that head of yours that we're going to share with everybody. And hopefully we impart some wisdom on people.
Yeah.
And thanks to everybody else for taking time today to listen and begin your organizational transformation Kung Fu journey with us.
All right. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, and please visit Sandi's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI consultinginc.ca, and Jen's website at managementpossible.com. Thanks again.